Valentina lay in the hospital on call. It was her turn to work the night shift when suddenly the alarms went off. She looked out the window and knew there was no time to lose. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. The story you will see happened in Chile just a few months ago. The person who wrote to us told us about an experience in her life. This is undoubtedly a sad story that could happen to any human being. In 1995, Valentina was just a teenager in her last year of high school. At that time, she had fallen in love with a boy, but unfortunately she used him and went abroad with her family. 2 months after the relationship ended in the middle of the school year, she suspected she was pregnant. She was very worried. She was in a situation she never thought she would be in to begin with. She didn't know what to do. She didn't even know how to tell her parents. In fact, they were very strict confessing. This was not a good idea, but there was no way to hide something like this. She walked down the street of the city of Valdivia, aimlessly in crime. But suddenly she felt the strength and said to herself, "I will have to face this, and I'm going to have this little one." Finally, she arrived home. Her mother was in the living room, watching TV. "You just got home. Where have you been? You should have been here at 2:00 p.m. It's already 7:00 p.m. "Mom," said Valentina, crying. "But what's wrong, Mom?" "I'm pregnant." Valentina remembers how her parents got angry that day and told her that the best thing to do was to have an abortion. "Tomorrow you will come with me." It was early in the morning and they took a bus. "Mom, where are we going?" she asked, scared. They arrived at a small town called Los Lagos. "Mom, what are we doing here?" "Don't ask. You know you're too young to be taking care of a child." "I don't want to. Please let's go, or I promise you it's going away on you." They entered a house. There was a guide who apparently was a doctor. Valentina tells that she looked at some diplomas in which it said that he was graduated in medicine. He was an older man. He told her, "Don't be afraid. I'm just going to examine. But there's something you should know. It is very dangerous to have an abortion. She is just a young girl. It is likely that when she has an abortion, she could become sterile, that she will never be able to have children again. It is recommended that she keep the baby, give birth, and give it up for adoption." "No, doctor, we don't want people to find out." "Do it. Does she want it to?" "Willa is going to want to, right, Valentina?" It was obvious she was being forced. The doctor simply said, "I won't. Maybe if I had had more children, but she's just a teenager. I don't want to carry that weight on my conscience. My opinion is to give it up for adoption." They returned home. It was as if fate had been in Valentina's favor, and she felt very sad to know how her parents were acting. When they arrived home, her parents talked to her and told her, "You're going to have that baby, but after it's born, you will have to give it up for adoption." Finally, time passed. 8 months and 2 weeks to be exact. Valentina lay in the hospital giving birth. Fortunately, everything went well. "It's a beautiful baby," said the nurse. Valentina asked to see her son. The girl saw him, but only for a moment. Her mother soon appeared and made her sign a paper saying that she was giving up her maiden. The only thing I remember was that mole on his skin, which I also have. My mother took care of all the paperwork to separate me from my son, from her own grandson. Valentina remembers her father telling her, "From now on, things are going to change. If you make the same mistake, you will leave home, and we will not pay for your studies." Valentina learned to move on. She started college and finished with honors. She even got a scholarship to study for a master's degree. She had studied medicine. Of course, there were times when she thought about that son. She wondered, will he be well? What will he be doing now? After finishing her career and getting a job at a hospital in the capital, she got married and had a daughter. She never told her husband about her past. She didn't want him to know everything she had to go through, so she was fine. They were a happy family, or at least that's how it seemed. However, one day after a few years, something very unexpected happened. It was the winter of 2019. Valentina had arrived at the hospital to work as usual. It was 2:00 in the morning when suddenly she heard the phone ring. An emergency patient arrived. "We need you to come to the surgery room." At that moment, Valentina looked out the window and felt something very strange. he saw how the paramedics were carrying someone injured. It was the first time she felt a very strong fear, so she rushed to the scene where they told him, "Poor guy has been run over. We must act immediately." At that instant, Valentina approached the young man, and just at that moment, when she saw that strange feeling became bigger, she felt that time was standing still, but that time was gold. So she acted immediately. The boy had a bare chest, and when she saw him, she noticed a mole on his skin that seemed familiar to her. She also had it, and it had a great resemblance to her father. Luckily, that young man resisted the operation, but he was still under observation. The doctor stayed with him for a while longer, but then she was called to see another patient. Then Valentina asked for the young man's name. She wanted to know more about him, and amazing as it seemed, the boy had her same last name. So she entered the hospital's computer, and there she discovered in the file that the young man had visited the facility before, and that he was from an orphanage. It was clear that he was my son. That similarity with my father, that mole on his skin. Besides, he lived in an orphanage. Who else could he be? I was in front of my son, and I didn't want him to be here at the hospital in that condition. But if life gave me one more chance, I would take advantage of it, I thought, and I would do everything I could to remedy the situation. So I went back. A nurse had come out of there, out of the intensive care ward where he was. She just told me the patient just passed away. He didn't make it. I couldn't believe it. I opened the door and went in. There were some colleagues there with some resuscitation devices next to me, and I just looked at how my son was lifeless. A doctor came up to me and said, "Poor guy." He didn't resist. He was from an orphanage. He had no parents or siblings. Who will cry for him? At that moment, I staggered and almost fainted. But I grabbed hold of a table next to me. I heard those words and saw him.